What is a hero? A mythological figure, often of divine descent, endowed with great strength or ability? An illustrious warrior? No. It's a person admired for achievements and noble qualities, one who shows great courage. Welcome to the What's a Hero podcast, where we dive deep into what a hero is and what makes them that hero. I'm your host, Ken Frownfelter, and I'm going to be introducing you to some of the world's most likely and unlikely heroes. You may have never heard of them before, and they most likely have never met you. But they all have one thing in common. They are ready to do whatever it takes to help make you better, even if it means sacrificing everything for you. Let's get into it.
Welcome to episode 28, part 2 of the What's a Hero podcast with me, Ken Frownfelter. We're going to continue our conversation with Jon Hartle and get into more detail as to who he is and what he does and why he does it. So let's get it going. Have some kind of thing where you are, you're supportive and you're encouraging. You can't just be so brutally honest with people, especially not if you're developing a relationship. So then you can now speak into their life.
Well, I think of for some reason you hit Whiplash, that movie, and I went there where he hates the words good job with my students. Every so often I but more importantly, it's be specific. If I'm saying this is great, I like the values that you're using, but use a full range of values, or your line quality or your proportion is off, but I like the way that you have good line quality, or you have good composition, but let's work on the proportions. You want to be specific, and at least for me, right? It's not about just, oh, great. Oh, that's looking awesome. Oh, good job. No, you want to be specific in your feedback. And like what you're talking about, feedback is, I think, critical for everyone. Myself, I'm always asking for feedback, and you should be open to that so that you can grow. Because the more feedback that you're willing to take, and the 4 agreements, Don Miguel Ruiz, that, not taking things personal. I'm not familiar. It's it's basically the 4 agreements are like, be impeccable with your word, right? So, we're all magicians in a way, meaning you can, like you kind of alluded to this earlier, but you can cast like, hey, you're just a crappy person. Yeah. And if that person takes that in, that's like poison, right? It makes them feel bad, right? So be impeccable with your word. Always just do your best. If you do your best, and this is why I tell my student, like, if you do your best in math and you get a C-, so what? You did your best. There's no regret. Right. And then don't make assumptions, right? If you're making assumptions, then that's going to lead you down kind of an emotional, dark, path. And then, what was the other one? And don't take anything personal, right? When you take something personal, that's when, your feelings, your emotions, you get all wound up and you get caught up in that, as opposed to that feedback is meant to help you. And you need to be like, just like the feedback that people gave me in my art career. Right. It helped me. If I didn't listen to it, I would still be back there.
And what is that called?
Or as far as
what is that? The 4 things are called?
Oh, the 4 agreements.
The 4 agreements. I got to write stuff like that down, because after the podcast, I'm going to be looking those up so I can write those down too.
Well, another thing, when you were talking about leadership qualities, and I immediately went to Simon Sinek, where he uncovers, knowing why. The why is one of the most important things. Why do you do what you do? Yeah,
I talked to Troy Yoho a couple episodes ago, and he's a West Point grad and all that stuff like that. And we were talking about Simon Sinek's books and things like that, and the various books that we kind of went off on a tangent on. But just that whole idea, and I'm actually in the middle of What's Your Why, his book.
Rad.
So it's actually kind of cool. So that you bring that up, because you're right. That's one of the big things is if you are somebody's subordinate or you're a follower or whatever of somebody, and you ask why, and they tell you, just do what I say, you don't need to know why. Then you got a question as to why are you, one, following this person? And is this the kind of leader that you want to have? Or if you don't have a choice because you work for that person and that's the boss. Okay. If you ever have the opportunity to progress and become a boss yourself, remember that if somebody asks you why, explain that, because if you can explain the why, people are going to be so much more apt to be like, oh, okay, totally makes sense. Because now I can buy into that.
Exactly.
And what you're doing is you're developing the relationship. So you think about little kids. When they're obviously little and you're doing something like, oh, I'm doing this. And they're like, well, why? Well, because and so with my kids, they would ask the 800th why question. You say, well, I'm doing this because of this. Well, why? Because of this. Well, how come? Because of this. Well, why? Well, because. And ultimately, I would run out of reasons. And I would go beyond me. I say, well, that's just the way God made it. So you're going to have to ask him. No. And so I close it out with little kids that way because they can ask why till they're blue in the face.
Yes.
And they really want to know. But
well, that's how it was with math for me when I was a kid is okay, I'm learning these equations, but how do they apply? Like, why am I learning this equation? Right. In what way am I going to be able to use this? And if I could understand that, then like you said, I'd be more apt to, okay, I want to learn this.
Right.
Because now I can see the place it has in the world.
Right.
I can see the meaning behind it.
Well, I remember us being kids and being in 5th grade, and you sat on the left side of from the student's perspective, you sat on the left side of the classroom. I sat maybe like 2 rows away on the right side of the classroom. And, so you were there, and I remember one time we like switched and I was able to sit over by you, and the teacher, it was Sister Assumpta. You remember her? Because we went to a Catholic school. We had none for a teacher.
I do.
And she like handed back papers or whatever, and you had A on math papers, and I had like D or C. I mean, that's just horrible. But you had this understanding of this, like, because you were saying, okay, well, how am I going to be able to use that? With me, that didn't matter.
No.
I just cared about, I was just like trying to keep up with everything, and that was my deal.
Actually, Kenny, what you did not know is that my dad would take me to a donut shop every single morning, and we would go over math.
I remember that. I remember you saying that.
And that's the only reason why I understood.
No, I remember you saying my dad, he would take me out for breakfast or donuts or whatever, and that he would go over math, and I would think, wow, that's cool. I didn't have that. I
didn't think it could be, and forgive me on I didn't understand why it could be that, like when we would go through it, I'm like, it can't be that easy. No, Dad, he said, yes, son, this is why you do that. And he just kind of broke it down. And that's the same thing with the guitar. You were drumming when I came over here.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I used to say, there's the growth mindset, the fixed mindset. And I used to say, I'm just not musically inclined until I was 30. A friend that had been playing with Ben Harper came over and explained the guitar to me in such a simple fashion that I was able to understand, and now I can play.
Yeah.
So I think it's just all sometimes of how that why is explained that then clicks.
And I think there's a point when you're ready.
Correct.
Because you may not, I think back then I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
And I had gone to several different schools and hopped around. And so I got to this point where I'm like, I don't remember this. And I don't remember this from the last class because it wasn't, as a kid, you need structure. You need similarity. Nevertheless, I was just like, okay, I look at this and I see the things that I always held on to that were always around me. And thanks to you, there was G.I. Joe, right? Had you not given me those action figures when we were,
and turned out you became a real life
4th or 5th grade or something like that, right? But had you not done that, I still would have been trying to figure out but I realized, okay, with that, I like that. So so that gave me a solid focal point. And I realized that. And kids don't realize that sometimes, that you grow up, you need to have some kind of solid focal point. And the fact that your dad was always there for you to do that for you, that's awesome for you, because you realize, okay, I can grow into this. Now we grow into teenagers and we grow in our early 20s and we're stupid. I mean, we're teenagers and we think we know everything and we don't. And you make stupid mistakes and you do things you shouldn't do. And all these things, but at what point, there's some point when you start realizing, okay, I need to change. And like you mentioned, I need to figure out where I need to continue to progress as opposed to stay stagnant. I need to figure out how I'm going to become something more, and I'm going to produce as opposed to consume. you know, and how do you do that? How do you become that person? But there's a point in your life when you become ready for that, and you don't necessarily get to pick it. It's just your body grows into that point. Like, oh, I'm ready for that now. Or it's just like when you have kids, like, you are now faced with this thing that you have to deal with. You know, you can't just, I'm not ready for that yet. The baby's born today. Yeah, but I'm not ready. Nope. We're going to give it some more time because I have other things I'm doing. That doesn't matter. You are now obligated to.
Well, some people do have to grow up faster, such as yourself. I mean, you had kids at an earlier age,
20.
And now you're a grandpa already.
Yeah.
Which for me, I'm a late dad. I'm an older dad, but I was a late bloomer in everything. Everything was a late bloomer for me.
Yeah.
And
but you were doing your things. You were going to school, you were learning, and you were developing who you were. And some of us others, we had to develop who we were as we're trying to develop other people, little people, right? And it just, life goes to where it's at. And I learned that age doesn't mean anything.
Oh, for sure.
You know, you can have best friends who are, 15 years your junior or 15 years your senior. I've got friends now that are, 60 years old. And I'm like, I never thought I'd have a 60-year-old friend, but, or that is.
I too have those friends. And I think, what it is it's just how you can, what you connect on, what your interests align, your mentality, your outlook, what you're after.
Yeah.
All of those I think play a role, but, I have to admit, Kenny, something that you did not know, and I'm not sure if I shared it, but I'm going to anyways. Back in grade school, Catholic, you're talking about.
Yeah.
I was told by the older guys that I could just take the Eucharist without it being blessed, and that I could just take that. That's fine. And the older kids told me this. So I was a younger altar boy, right? And so I took the Eucharist, and I was in class, and I was passing it out to friends. And I got kicked out of being an altar boy because of that.
I did the same thing and got in big trouble too.
Oh, okay. So, see, I did not. And I was like, in here I was being misled. You're being led. And again, that's by people that were leading you down, and you had to like, oh shoot, you mean I'm not supposed to? Okay. And you learn.
Right.
But I didn't know. I was so young, and they took advantage of that. They saw that. And that's what you have to watch out for too.
Right.
People, but it is neat to have friends of all, like you said, age doesn't matter. Friends of all. I have this one friend, who he's a jazz musician, got to start, Aretha Franklin, and I became his photographer. And we met at a chance meeting. We were just going to the bookstore at the same time. We were wearing the same kind of hat. And I was like, dude, you got a killer hat. And then I go, hey, here's my card. I'm a photographer. And then he came up to me later and he goes, hey, I have this show. I need a photographer. And then we've been friends now for 20 some years.
Right. And so I learned that also when it comes to what, professional, in the professional realm at work or whatever. And there's kids that come in, young guys that are young officers. They come in and they're doing these things. And I'm like, man, they're younger than I was when I started. And they've been doing this for a couple years now, and they're still younger than I was when I started. But then they are also, they have this idea and they're doing this thing. I'm like, how is it they're doing this thing? And man, am I stupid or something like that? And I mean, and somebody pointed out to me, says, age doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean your brain works, and it works good. The influence you have, maybe they don't have something else that they have to think about. And they have room for this creativity to come in and become something. They're not thinking about having little kids because they didn't have them, or they're not thinking about a mortgage because they don't have to worry about that. Their mind is free to think about this forward progression of themselves. And so, which is way less or more or whatever than I had. And so you become something, you can learn from that, and you can start becoming who you are based off of realizing you are not based off of everybody else. You are not, this isn't a zero-sum game. Just because somebody else has something doesn't mean you don't. And just because you have something doesn't mean they don't have something.
I love the fact that right now I'm seeing it and you're seeing it. And with, there's a lot of pluses to the social media, but I'm seeing a lot of younger generation, becoming so great in so many different disciplines at an earlier age. And like you said, now we're able to connect with different cultures immediately. We're able to see what other people are doing. We're able to get ideas and share ideas. And from that culmination of ideas, that growth, that exponential growth.
Right.
And you're seeing that in everything. And with that exponential growth, there comes some caution. Like right now, if you're talking about technology, but that exponential growth in humans, I think can be so great if we can all harness that.
Right. There's a bittersweetness to it. There's absolutely some good, but you were mentioning earlier, and I don't know if it was before we pressed record or during this, but you mentioned that as a social media or just the internet itself, that ability for things to really kind of bog things down and make it, some things are just not good for kids to do. And so I think, you said that. Well,
you said it also, keeping up with the Joneses. My point is they're spending so much time on social media that it used to be when you walk through the halls, everyone's like, hey, what's up? Hey. And they're talking.
Yeah, right.
And now I'm doing these series of paintings where it's people, they're together, but they're disconnected. They're connected in the sense that they're on the phone, but they're right next to their friends and they're not even talking.
Right.
They're on their phone. And so like things of that nature, are being lost or learning how to communicate. What we talked about is everything's in the presentation.
Yeah.
Learning these kind of skills. But I think for the most part, as long as they can have parents that care and you keep that balance, I think it's going to be, fine.
And I think that's a big thing with people. You are responsible. You're responsible for those kiddos. And this is me talking to adults here. You're responsible for those kids. Tell them to put their phones away. And you're not there to be their friend. Well, you're their parent. Just
limit. Everything is fine in a certain capacity, right? We all know you're not going to, like, you have a couple of Oreo cookies, that's fine. But if you're doing double stuff, and you're having boxes every day,
you're having the package every day. Yeah.
That becomes it's going to become an issue.
Yeah.
But again, moderation's key. We've all heard that. And,
and then, like I was saying, being that parent, you're responsible for that kiddo. So that kiddo is doing something and you're like, well, I don't want to hurt their feelings. Yeah, you need to. That. You have to sometimes.
Yes.
Because they don't know what their feelings are. They're all over the place.
I think talking to them, with my daughter, it's all about just talking to her, just explaining reasons why. Again, going back to that why.
Yeah.
If they understand the why, they understand my perspective, then okay, let me hear your perspective. And then let's come up with a solution. Right. And that's, like you said, a lot of people need to just be parents, not friends.
Yeah.
And that's hard for some because, everyone right now, well, you get that, people talk about that entitlement.
Yeah.
Right. And how did that occur? Well, it's parents having the greatest intention, right, of helping their kid. Cause they're like, oh, I had to suffer. I don't want my kid to suffer. I'm going to give them this.
Right.
But in doing that, they don't know that work ethic or the power of like working through and struggling. And struggling is part of learning. All these kids want instant gratification.
Yeah.
And no, the key is delayed gratification.
Right.
And that's what I've been doing with my daughter. It's like, oh, you want that? No problem. You're just going to have to wait 2 hours.
I'm sure she's loving that
because we're on the road.
Yeah.
And, that's okay.
You got to go to the bathroom. We'll make that happen. but you want some cookies or you want a juice box. We're going to wait. But
Kegels. No, just kidding. Yeah.
Jeez. No. And that's, you don't think about that failure or that lack, that go without, that struggle. All those things are important. You have to have those things because without those things, there's no success. If everything is success, when you don't succeed and you actually do
without that bitter, it's not as sweet.
Yeah. And there's going to be this thing that's going to go, it's got to be bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger because everything has to always succeed and has to succeed and has to be more and has to be more. At some point, not everything can stay up there in the sky. At some point, things come down. And so you have to if you have more failures, you have more lack of success, you have more struggle, you have all that stuff.
More lessons of learning.
Those successes are going to be so fantastically powerful. And people are going to see that in you. And that's going to build a couple things. That's going to build some humility in you. That's going to build some character in you to where now you want to, like we were talking about before, that character that wants to be that better thing that you can now speak in other people's lives and be like, when they're talking about, well, I can't believe this is happening. Well, let's put it in perspective, because that thing you think is happening, it's not really that bad comparatively. Oh, okay. Makes sense. Or I can't believe this is happening. This is terrible. Yeah, you're right. I'll tell you, this similar thing happened to me, and it was like this, and this is how I got out of it. Now you have ways of how to navigate through problems. But if you don't have these situations, these failures and these lack of success and this struggle.
And that you got to put yourself out there. You got to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
To make, I think, something great, you have to lay some things on the line sometimes. You have to take those risks and be vulnerable and be open. And, like you said,
get out of that comfort zone.
Yeah.
Cause I mean, look at it. You go for a job and you have to have an interview. Everybody's that has a job has probably had an interview at some point for some way or another. The night before, you're pretty uncomfortable. Getting into there, you're probably sweating, and if you're wearing a suit, your armpits are just dripping, and all that. This whole thing. You go in there and you're nervous. That's how it is. What it is, And
I think rising to the challenge, and like you said, once you're in that interview, and you're uncomfortable. For me, I'm uncomfortable up until I start something. It doesn't matter whether I'm photographing a wedding, photographing, family, if I'm painting a commission painting, if I'm sculpting, it's all that beginning, like I said before, but once you get that momentum, you take off.
Right.
But yeah, I think, going back to, being a hero, I do want to say there was only one time, and I shared this, where I did feel like a hero, and I don't feel like a hero on this day to day. I do feel like I just concentrate on being the best I can be, and not just for myself, but for my students and for just anyone I encounter on a daily.
Right.
I want to bring, happiness and joy. But there was this one time that I was working, TLC. It's after school. I was the site coordinator running it, and I got to go on lunch. I come back, and we're at this huge pool, and it was at El Toro High School, and there's these huge diving boards, and we would tag up all these kids that you couldn't swim, right? If we would put
little armbands or whatever,
like a little red wristband if they couldn't swim. And I came back, and I see this girl from the other end of the pool. And this is an Olympic sized pool, and I see her climbing up the diving board, and I look at the lifeguard. One of my leaders is flirting with the lifeguard, so the lifeguard's not paying attention.
Right.
She's up on the diving board, and she jumps off the tallest. I'm a pretty brave girl.
Sure.
I'm thinking like she's 5, and she's,
holy cow.
Yeah, she's 5. She's jumping out of this huge diving board.
That's either fearless or not knowing what to be afraid of.
And she has this red wristband, so I know she does not know how to swim.
Right.
And she just sinks like a rock, and she's going down. And I had my clothes on. I had my lunch. I had this drink in my hand. And I'm like looking around. I'm frantically looking. No one's noticing. I feel like I'm in a slow motion movie. Yeah. Like I was once choking and no one knew it. And I was looking around, and it was like slow mo. And I had to do like the Heimlich on the edge of a table.
Right.
And I felt exactly like that. And I start running. I ditch the drink, and I dive in with all my clothes, and I get her up. And then we had to, pump her, get the water, turn her to the side.
Do CPR and stuff.
She was fine. No, fortunately, all we had to do was turn her to the side. She coughed up all the water, and she was fine. It did not get.
Okay.
But I mean, that was probably like my one. There was one of 3 of those instances in my life where I'm like, wow, that's.
And so you said there's another one where you saved some girls out in the ocean.
Yeah,
because I'm going to put this out. You're an avid surfer.
I do love to surf. Yes,
that's your zen, your getaway, isn't it?
It's one of those things where I feel like working off the energy of. I mean, I don't feel that. When you're snowboarding, it's just different. Everything's different. When you're playing baseball, when you're throwing the football around, when you're skateboarding, everything is different compared to surfing. And in my mind, just that kind of that synergy that you're coming together with nature's force, and
you hear nothing but the crashing of the water and the.
Well, it's just a beautiful thing. But yeah, I was with my nephews at that time, and two girls are yelling, help, help, bobbing up and down. You think at the time, you're like, is this for real? Is
you're just playing around? What's going
like
on?
what's going on? Is this like a joke thing? And then before you realize it's not a joke. And I told my nephews to stay on the beach, right? And they fortunately were nephews that listened. And,
right.
I went out there and started swimming, and I pulled one up, and I had her, was swimming back, and I called another surfer over. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, where's the lifeguard? At this time.
Was he flirting too?
No, but the lifeguard did meet us out there after, like right in the midst of it, and helped us, because unfortunately I couldn't handle both of them, and one of them was pulling me down. So I literally had to take the one that I could handle. And that's what was tough and by that time, the other surfer was able to make it over, and we put both the girls on
his board or whatever. Yeah.
So, and then the lifeguard came as well and then helped us. Right. But that was a sketchy situation, but at the same time, it wasn't, fortunately we were all there and we all came together.
Right. And they were cool, and everybody's like, oh man, thanks so much.
The girls were definitely elated.
So you're talking about that. So where you save this little girl at the swim pool, you save these two girls in the ocean, and then you told me about, and this was before we started recording today as well, and you were talking about just this desire for things to be right, and this desire to have justice, and to be for things to be, and it has to be right, and there has to be. You don't like to see things that are wrong or hurting people, and when they are, you cannot sit idly by.
Well, I just, it's hard for me to not understand. Like, I don't understand evil people. I don't understand the evil that is in the world, but I don't understand also how people can just sit back and watch when something bad is happening to another human, right, or animal or anything. I don't understand. And I know I guess I came to the fact that people are living, the reason why they don't act is because a lot of people, I believe, are living in a state of fear.
Right.
And they're afraid, right, of helping. Like, what if I help, I might get hurt, my family might get hurt. And that's a genuine concern and a valid concern for a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about like the I've gone to calls where there's the neighbor who's calling on the noise complaint on their neighbor, and you're like, well, have you gone talk to him? No, that's why I call the police. Why, how can you go, why don't you want to go talk to him? I just call the police. It's probably safer that way. Okay. You talk to them, and they're like, oh, I had no idea. I wish you'd have just said something. Yeah, I'll turn it down. You bet.
Well, and that goes along the lines of, even in a workplace, you go above your boss rather than have you talked to your boss about your concern or your
right.
And sometimes, people are fearful of maybe being, I guess, pinpointed or
retaliated on or something like that.
Exactly.
And you know why that is? Because they're not building relationships like we talked about before. You have to build it with your boss. You have to build it up your chain of command, down your chain of command, across. You have to build it with everybody.
I agree. And I ask some people that I do witness that they're not necessarily maybe good at building relationships, and I want to understand why. Mm-hmm. Like, I'll ask them, why is it that you don't do that? Or why is it that you didn't communicate with that person? Or why is it that you didn't? And most of the time it's because, and this is what's weird in us, and I used to have this, that I used to think that people didn't care what maybe I had to say, or they didn't want to listen, or that I was unimportant, and that it just didn't matter. And I guess you have to come to a point where, again, you grow into your own skin. Mm-hmm. You realize that you have to be confident, you have to be yourself, and you have to, like you said, I think, make connections in this world.
Right.
And I think the more connections and the more skills, the more relationships, the more opportunities in this life. Mm-hmm. And that's what, I don't know. I think this life is so magical, and I've had so many beautiful adventures and magical days. Like, I've had those Point Break days.
Yeah.
I've had that's what I want other people to I guess, to experience.
Yeah, because there's so many that don't want to do that. They don't want to. They're happy with this go nowhere life
Status.
where they're just and we talked about this. Was you just check a box. Yeah. I got through this and I got through Monday. Check a box. Got through Tuesday. Check a box through Wednesday. I'm just here for the weekend. If your life is just is all surrounding 2 days, there's nothing to. There's no validity to it, and so you have to consider your life is every day. And I mentioned this a couple episodes ago, where you do something, your name's on it. You paint a fence. That's John painted that fence, and you go change the oil in your car. John changed the oil in his car. John goes to work. John's at work, not John. He hung up his John suit in his closet at home. It's now Monday, and he goes to work, and he's now at work on Monday. Some guy that is there at work. He does his job, and then Friday now. Okay, now John puts his John suit back on, and John now gets to go and you do whatever that happens, and that's not something you want to do. Your life is your life all the time.
Well, it's easy to get stuck in a routine, like I said, we're creatures of habit, and but I think it's good to every so often, break out of that, try something new, just break the mold. Yeah, break the mold and do something surprising. Try anything. Try,
surfing.
There you go. Try surfing. Try kite surfing. Try then throwing knives. Try
painting.
There you go.
Go be a painter. go buy a cheap camera on Amazon. Go take some photos. Go learn, taking nature photos or whatever.
That's where anything begins. It's that one step.
Yeah.
And after that step, it just keeps getting, sometimes it's not going to be easy, step after step, because in the beginning, you're going to be learning lots of lessons. But again, I think it's all about not giving up. And I think sometimes getting in that rut or that status quo lifestyle of where you're just checking the boxes, in a way, I don't want to say this to offend anyone, but I think myself included, you get close to giving up, and you have to snap out of it and realize, look, I don't want to give up in life. I want to go all in.
Right.
I want to make every move meaningful. I want to make every move count. And, going back to that hope, you ever do this? I always do this sort of thing that, let's say I'm just going to go down to Laguna Beach, right?
Okay.
Laguna Beach is so packed all the time.
And so those of you, because I got listeners in Ohio, and I got listeners I got some in New York and stuff like that.
Okay.
And so Laguna Beach is
a high tourist area. It's a beautiful, just beach town that's filled with life and art, and actually that's where I do the Festival of Arts there. The big art show,
and it's in California,
pageant of the Masters
on California beaches, right?
California beaches. And there's millions of people that even go through that show, but go through that town,
right?
And so it's packed. There's hardly ever, it's tough to find parking sometimes. And so I do something as silly as I'm always channeling a parking spot. So right when I get there, all the time, even my wife is like, how do you do this? I'll come right up and there'll be a spot right there for me. And I do this with everything. And whether you call it imagery, whether you call it envisioning, whatever you call it, whatever word you have for it, but that's
willing it.
Okay. Yeah. Willing it. Yeah. And that's what, again, that goes into my purpose, passion, and vision. And again, if you envision things, and I don't care if it's you're playing basketball and you imagine the parabola, the path of the ball before you even shoot.
Right.
This is what I'm talking about. Most people don't necessarily use this on a daily or even on in everything they do. And I think if you were to do that, envision yourself, if I'm looking at a wave, you mentioned surfing, I'm imagining myself on that wave even, before I go out there, before I even paddle out. And most people should do this with everything. So you're looking for magical moments.
Right.
You're looking for those unique times that other people miss.
You're creating. This is the manifesting. So the antithesis of I guess just being positive, not being pessimistic, but just being I'm going to be a positive person today. Yeah. Okay, blah, blah, blah. But it's more than that. You know what? I'm going to go try to make things positive. I'm going to go try to make things good. and I'm going to go out of my way to do that.
I think it's The Illusionist, Richard Bach, and I might be wrong, but in that he talks about, imagining, like making something tangible.
Yeah.
It's not just like, okay, if you wanted to, let's do a trick. Like, okay, Kenny, you want to see a feather. So imagine a feather right now. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then tomorrow you're like, oh my gosh, guess what? You call me and you're like, John, guess what? I saw the feather. It was on the cereal box. I was eating cereal and I looked up and there's the feather exactly. And then I would say, but did you imagine holding it? And then, no, I didn't. I didn't make it tangible.
Right.
So the minute you make something tangible, then you make it real.
Yeah.
And then that happens.
Yeah. That reminds me of the, and I think this is on a way lower scale, but this is when you buy a new car. Say you get a car and you buy a Jeep. All of a sudden you're driving around and you see Jeeps everywhere. You stop at a red light. Oh, there's a Jeep. Oh, there's another one. It passes you on the freeway, does whatever. And you're like, everybody's got a Jeep, but you didn't notice it before you bought that Jeep. You didn't think about it.
The more you see, the more you see, the more you know.
Right. Right. And and that's exactly right. And so when you're saying that you get your passion, your purpose
and vision
and your vision, those three things, are they numbered? Is one come before the other, or are they just in a constant amorphous phase where they're able to just be something at a different time?
I think there's no real hierarchy or order to it in my mind. It's more or less, it does always tend to start out with a vision though. Yeah.
Right.
For me. And then just do everything you do it with passion. Mm-hmm. It's like do 100% or why even be doing it?
Sure. Yeah.
So do 100%. And then if you're finding purpose in what you do, meaning, then it's going to make everything you do more powerful.
Right.
So, if you're working out, right? If you apply that to just working out, if you work out and you're just going through the motions, right? You're that type of person. You're just going through the motion. You're not going to see very many results.
Right.
Then if you pick up the intensity and my dad taught me that even at youngest age, he would teach me isometrics and teach me, it's not the size of the dog, right? And it's the size of the fight and the dog.
Right.
Right. And so with that, train your mind, right? And you get that in all movies.
Yeah. You get that. Yeah. And now, and I heard that since I was a little kid and stuff, but then you don't even think about it until you're actually able to apply that. And like we were talking about with math, but you don't see it until there's some application for it. You can actually, that's what that means, and it's just weird when your mind's ready to actually assimilate it or whatever the case is. There was a, and I've talked about this guy on here before, Kent Williams, and he's a police chief in a Chicago area police department. And he was talking about your passion and your purpose will equal your legacy. Was it purpose or was it along those lines? So if you have your passion and you add that to your purpose and you put those things together and you realize, hey, this is what I meant to do on here, that is going to develop. So it's like passion plus purpose equals. And so you have the equal sign making it your legacy. So what are you going to leave behind what have you developed in those students of yours, or what have you in the people that your own children? So what's the legacy your dad has left you? Because your dad, as you've talked to him about him a lot here today, and he's no longer with us. Yeah,
unfortunately, he passed away, 2 weeks before my daughter was born, and he'd always say, I was born on Father's Day. Father's Day's coming up here.
Yeah,
and he had always wanted a son, and we had a very close relationship. And it kind of pains me when I hear of some people, on the side note, of some people not having that close relationship with their parent or their siblings, or
right.
So if you're listening, make amends. Just,
but nobody's serious. Do it.
Okay. but no, that legacy. My dad would always talk about, hey, I had this dream, and he said this before he had passed. He said, John, don't worry. This angel kind of like appeared to me and said that you're the father of many. And I kind of laughed, because it sounds kind of bad, when you hear it.
Right. Abraham, whom yeah. Or are you some kind of, does your wife know about it?
Yeah. But what he was meaning was like what you're talking about, alluding to, is the fact that like we don't know what we've said. And that's why I just want to be positive in a lot of my encounters, because you don't know what seed will grow.
Right.
Right. And I want it to be a seed of positivity. I want it to be a seed of love. I want it to be a seed of purpose and passion and vision. I want the kid to have that. And I don't know what really impact I have other than the people that have reached out and have told me so. But again, we don't do it because of that. No teacher, no nurse. I was thinking, do nurses turn away during this pandemic, because, they were worried. No, they got into this because they want to help sick people. So it's not like they're going to turn away. If anything, they're the heroes that continue on. They're you've been put in the front lines, when they're talking about, all these things, from whether it be defunding the police or this or that. No, I think it's needed, but what's needed is the person of, I could care less what color, what race, what ethnicity, but I look at the heart. Yeah. And I look at your actions. And like, that's what I said about you is your heart has not changed. Like, you are still that good guy and you haven't been jaded. 'Cause I do see some people jaded through the years, and it's understandable. Yeah. But it's neat when you can see someone who has built their house on a rock. Right. Right. And they stay steady. Right. And they're not broken. Right. And that's what's cool.
Well, like you said, you got to be grounded somewhere. And had I started this earlier, I wouldn't have been ready. And there's a time when you're ready and you do things and things come up. And I think you were talking about, during a different conversation we were having, but we were saying that finding a mentor or getting a mentor, and I mentioned this before, previously on the show, is that the mentee does not go find the mentor. The mentor does not go find the mentee. And you were talking about the little kid that said, hey, and you told him go home and draw two things. That was up to him. The mentor was there, and he was like, okay, yeah, I'll do it if you have to do this. So did that kid follow through? No, unfortunately he did not, but he had that opportunity. He was now the mentee who was not following through with his mentor. But maybe later on that kid will grow up and he'll find that mentor that he needs.
And maybe he just wasn't ready. Maybe
wasn't time.
He knew what he wanted, but he just wasn't ready to put the work in.
Right. And so when you'll eventually find somebody, and it's going to take some work on your end to go up and lose some humility. Hey, would you be able to teach me that? Hey, that's very interesting. Can you show me how that happens? How do I do that? How do I become this? And then the person will be like, well, I don't really know much about it. But what I do know, I'll pass on to you. Okay, great. Or they like, well, yeah, sure, I'll show you. It's just like this is easy.
Well, that's what I did with. I was working at a high school, and I love, there's certain artists that I admire. Right. I admire their work, and this was a long time ago where I wanted to go work, and I wanted to find an art mentor. Mm-hmm. And so I emailed this guy, Paul Day, and does stuff. He's done huge memorials all over the world. He's done the Battle of Britain in England. He's done the Queen of England's Jubilee coin. He does all these really cool things all over the world. And I emailed him for a year. Right now, didn't respond back. Nothing, I was just emailing him my work and emailing him things I'm doing with my students, and said, hey, could I come out there? Mm-hmm. And this is what I tell my students to do. Like, if you want to become something and you want to emulate, you want to be around people that are achieving and higher. Yeah. You want to become a better tennis player. What do? You play someone that's better than you. You want to be a better surfer. You hang out with surfers that are good, good surfers. Yeah. Right. And they'll give you tips, and you got to be open to that. Again, that goes into the humility. You got to be willing to take like what you're doing wrong. Right. And people are always, I just started skateboarding again, skating the bowls and transitions and stuff. And people are always speaking to my life and, oh, well, hey, look, work on your positioning. But anyways, get back to Paul Day. After a year, he calls me, hello, is this John? And I'm like, yeah, this is John. And he's like, hi, this is Paul Day. I'm just calling you. You've been wanting to, come out and live with me and work with me. And I was like, yeah. And here this guy, he's such an eloquent speaker and such profound and artist. And then all of a sudden he's like, sure, you can come out. And he, I am like, really? And then he's like, do you have any allergies that I need to know about? So when we're cooking food for you, I'm like, oh my gosh,
you're going to cook food for me?
Yeah. Like this guy, he's like, yeah, you can live with me for a little bit and work. And I just thought he was this most amazing guy.
Yeah.
And, sure enough, he picked me up, you know, in I think it was his Ferrari or whatever. And he didn't know me from Adam. I could have been, you know,
that's an artist lifestyle though. I mean, that's not something regular people do.
But meaning like, you know, you can go on a ride along.
Sure.
Right,
Yeah.
At the sheriff's. Cause you know, like if you want to look into that, my point is when you're talking about mentors, you're talking about putting yourself out, you gotta put yourself out there.
Right.
And you gotta touch base with people that you want to become like, right? If you want to become the CEO of Disney, start emailing.
You got to start showing up. You got to get into the world. Yeah. And
So-
I know exactly what you mean. It's that surround yourself with what do they say? That you're going to be
who you surround yourself
with. So the 5 people you surround yourself with the most, that's who you're going to be. You're going to have the most influence on you. If those people are bad, you're going to be bad. If those people, and you think about it, even if you're the worst of the 5 best people you know, and you're the 6th, and you're worse than all 5, you're still, and if they're the best people you know, you're really good. And whatever it is, it's whether it's painting or whether it's guitar playing or martial arts, or if it's, you know, just being a positive person that goes out and serves other people, cares about other people. That's cool. But if you're surrounding yourself with drug addicts and people that are,
it's going to be a slow demise.
That are just in for gossip, and they're in to hurt other people and just try to work on themselves. You're never going to get anywhere if your intent is just to step on people. If you want to go somewhere,
if
you're going to go somewhere, you have to get outside of that and get outside of the pack and move up from the outside in. So
agreed.
So you're talking about your dad, and there was something that you told me a couple years ago that has stuck with me forever since you told me that. And it's just one of those things that I think about almost on the daily.
I'm even interested now. What did I tell you?
What did I say? You said that your dad told you if you could give a TED Talk. No, was it your dad that said this, right?
Yeah. If
you give a TED Talk, what would it be about? And so you still today, you're like, I have no idea, because I don't know if I have anything that I would be able to share in one thing.
My students ask me to do TED Talks almost on a weekly, yet like you just stated, I would not know what my focus would really want to be.
Yeah.
As well as, again, there's a little bit of that. I don't know if, my dad also said when I was younger, you know, I wanted to make those, I didn't finish that story when I wanted to make those videos, he kept on saying, so who are you?
Right.
And what he meant by that was I wasn't anybody at that point. Meaning I wasn't a famous artist. I wasn't a teacher. I wasn't anything. So what validity did I have? Who was I? What authority did I have as someone who was going to do instructional DVDs on this and that? And so that I reflected on that a lot. And that's where it made me say, look, I have to put in a lot more time to my craft, to making a name for myself. And now, you know, being a teacher of, you know, 16 years or 20 some years and being an artist, that's now selling and having his work collected and stuff. Now I can revisit that. But I think, again, going back to, he was basically saying that, you know, I needed to make a name for myself before other people would I guess listen. Or you had to make a name for yourself before people give you a name. Interesting perspective. You know, again, I have a lot of subject matter that I would want to cover, but I don't know if I have one particular that right. sits above the rest. So along that conversation is what you just alluded to, or what you mentioned was, who are you? And so when he asks, who are you? And you have to, before you go out and do something and say, I'm going to go show the world who I am. Do you even know who you are? Well, I guess I don't feel like I'm there's always this, if I'm being vulnerable, if I'm being honest, sure. There's this underlying thing that I'm not good enough still, even though I've produced some, in my mind, I love the work that I'm doing now. I like literally love it. And it's not about, I don't care if I don't sell it. I don't care if I'm producing it because it's in me.
Right.
And I'm becoming the person that I want to be, that I'm proud of.
Right.
And I still don't feel as if I'm, I don't know, maybe, yeah, I struggle with that still.
Just who you are.
Not who I am. I know who I am.
Right.
But I guess I don't feel as if I'm that guy, just like on this podcast, to be honest with you. I'm reluctant because I don't consider myself, I consider, teachers that truly put their heart into everything and everything into each child.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're trying to do right by every person they come across. Mm-hmm. And in my mind, the definition of a hero is someone who does the right when no one else will, or who does the things that they don't necessarily, they just show up, even though they don't want to, they have to do it in order to, whether it be saving someone, whether it be helping someone. Mm-hmm. And that's
because they're answering something inside of them. Like you mentioned integrity earlier.
Yeah. But they're doing it not for themselves. They're doing it selfless.
Right.
And that's, I think anyone in any realm doing something for others without expecting anything in return and truly just giving it and not needing any sort of recognition or anything, that is that hero. But it's hard. It would be hard to classify myself as that, even though.
Well, here's the thing: is you got on here and you even came in today and you're like, well, I feel really weird because I don't see myself as a hero. I don't know how many people I brought on here that have said that exact same thing. I'm not a hero. I talked to a guy, he's Gary, he was in Vietnam, and he was a front gunner on a riverboat on the Mekong Delta, right? And his story, it's great. And he was so nervous. He's like, I'm not a hero though. He goes, I don't know if I really have anything to say. And we talked for hours. And it was good stuff. He talked about his 21st birthday or 20th birthday, and he got into a firefight, and all he wanted was his little can of pears. That was his birthday present to himself, was a can of pears, and he lost it, and he had to get in a firefight. Then he was able to find it after the firefight was over. So, I mean, it's just this cool story, right? And so, but he's like, I'm not a hero. And I've talked to other people. I'm not a hero. I just do my job. I'm a nurse, or I'm a teacher. I don't really consider myself. Well, here, and I've talked to some dispatchers, and they're like, well, I'm not really a hero. And I think dispatchers absolutely are heroes, the 911 dispatchers. And here's my thought on it. And I'm going to see if I can bullet point this. You went to orphanages and helped these kids who had nothing else and were a beacon, a light for them. You were at camps for terminal kids who they saw the end, and you showed them love in their lifetime that maybe somebody else didn't, and they didn't realize people could do that. You then become a teacher for these students, these junior high and these high school kids who don't know, they don't have something else. And people say, other teachers say, well, we send them to you. You're the one that comes and fixes these kids because you develop relationships with these people. You have the football coach or whatever saying, well, just send me my kids back if they're being a problem. No, I'm going to develop them because you decide in your heart that you're going to be there and develop relationships, and you're going to make sure that what you are able to speak into their life is something more. And then you start going into this whole idea that everything you do, you want to make sure you leave a positive impression on, because you don't want somebody you don't want to lose that chance that you have to be able to speak into somebody else's life, to serve other people and to care about other people, and that when you love people by serving or giving or doing whatever, you have no desire to get anything in return. You're just doing it because it's the right thing to go do. And if you cannot explain to me that is not a hero, then I think your own definition is wrong, because what you do for everybody else is more heroic than a lot of people do on this planet. And you don't have to wear a uniform, and you don't have to be paid to be this first responder or whatever. Everybody can be that hero who goes out and does things for other people, expecting nothing in return.
Well, I guess the only thing, and again, my mind goes to the loophole, and I guess as you were talking, I'm not encountering a great risk of like losing my life or something.
Right.
Like the gentleman that you just described with the
Gary
with the pears, like that. Wow. Like, first of all, thanks for your service. And second of all, I was not being shot at while I was helping.
You're right. You're right. But like I said earlier, this isn't a zero-sum game. Just because you do something doesn't mean there has to be the chance of loss of life, or has to be. But if you don't say something into somebody else's life, what are the chances that nobody else will? Will that life be lost anyways? Well,
again, I guess I just care, and I want every person to know at least someone's in their corner.
Yeah.
And someone like loves them. But at the same time, it's a hard balance, because some kids need for you to be stern with them. Some kids need a soft and gentle approach. Yeah. Some kids, it's kind of like what you were saying earlier, you have to assess a scenario when you're coming into a situation, and you have to know how to deal with this in the quickest, most efficient way possible, while, coming up with a solution that's going to appease everyone pretty much.
Right.
Yet you're probably encountering, while wearing a bulletproof vest.
Sure.
Me, I'm not, I could, yes, I think there are definite teachers that have it. I think they're in a very much more, challenging situation and circumstances.
Yeah.
But again, I don't want to defend, the hero thing for too much longer. I just want to commend all those people. As I'm looking up right here, I see all the history of the United States Marines, our service, and all the people that, when I look at the red on our flag, that have bled for our country and for our freedom, and right. What great. The thing that saddens me the most right now, and I know I'm diverting.
Do it.
Is just how, I want to say that media is criminal, because they're dividing rather than unifying. We have so many beautiful things about America, and we're being divided from within. And yet what we need is to look at each other and pull out the best out of each other.
Right.
What we need to do is, like you said, and we spoke about, is form relationships with people around us. You don't need to call the cop. You need to bring a pie over to your neighbor.
Yeah.
And that's actually,
go talk with them.
I had a neighbor called the cops on me when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Cause I was playing soccer and I hit his stepside, Chevy truck, and it was a very much, it was just a fantastic stepside truck, and his Harley. And he was a tough guy. Like, he was a Cherokee Indian.
Yeah.
He was very hard, hated me for the longest time, called the cops on me. The cops came to my house, and then my mom said, nope, we're going to bake him a pie. And so we baked him a pie, and here I brought it over, and I was like, are you kidding me? You're making me do this,
That
Mom?
Sounds like your mom. Yeah. Man, that's cool.
And I was like, what the heck? And here I'm coming over here, and he opens the door, and he's looking at me, and he kind of starts off, you railed into my car and you dented it. And I was like, I'm so sorry. Here's this pie, and I hope you have a good day.
Yeah.
And then the next time, he had this huge telescope out, and I remember, I was playing on the street, and he goes, hey, John, why don't you come here? I'll show you the rings on Saturn. And I came out and I looked in his telescope, and I was like, oh my God, this is so rad. And before you know it, he was a hard exterior.
Yeah.
He was like a cookie, like those good chocolate chip. He was a hard exterior, but soft in the middle. And from that point on, I would watch his house when he would leave. And he encountered these kids that were like literally picking up a turtle and hucking it. and it broke the shell of the turtle.
Jeez.
And he took this turtle. He got those kids away, and he got the turtle and he nursed it back. And now he had 9 turtles in his backyard from that one. Right. and he just, he was the kindest guy, but you wouldn't have known it, you know, unless we started to develop this relationship.
Right.
And he and I became actual friends. And here he was, an older man, and he was already retired, and it was all from my mom baking that pie.
Saying we're going to do a pie. Yeah.
And that was, my mom knew how to do it. You know, that was right. And I think he just liked my mom's pie. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
But, you know, and that's,
he just wanted more pies.
And that's a lesson I think we can all take away too is, you know, you can be a jackass and you want to fight somebody, you want to punch somebody in the face, and 9 times out of 10, going back and saying, okay, how do I work this? There's a different angle to this, and putting on a different lens and saying, I'm going to work from this angle, or I'm going to look at it from here, and developing a relationship, talking to somebody and say, okay, let me see from your angle. What do you see? Sure. There's going to be that 1% or that one time that there's no other choice but to punch the guy in the face. But it's so rare. It's so ridiculously rare that more often than not, you have to talk to somebody and you have to be able to just say, look, I get it. I understand it. And put your ego aside and be humble and be like, I get that. I don't know how many times that, you know, I go to turn into a parking spot and somebody's like, they give me the finger. They're mad because, I was going to take that one. Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. Why don't you go ahead and take it? And now they're speechless because they're like, really? Yeah. I'm sorry. I was wrong. And if you admit you're wrong, because I'm wrong more than I'm right. And so if you admit to it and you let people know this, and they're going to be like, oh, okay. Oh, all right. Along those lines, I'll tell a story really quick where we were in New York City, and we had gotten on this ferry. We were going to go look at the Statue of Liberty. We're there on the water. Well, before we get onto the boat, we were all in one of those zigzag lines, you know, and, we're stopped for a long time. We're waiting, and then the line starts moving. So we start moving, and these people that were in an adjacent line, they duck underneath the ropes, and they get in front of us. And so the guy at the front of the line, he's like, and it's New York, so everybody's a little more, hey, huh? You know, they're a little more call you out type of people. And so they're like, hey, you just cut, you're out. And the guy and his family or whatever, they're like, the guy's like, oh, them? Yeah, them? Yeah, okay, yeah, them. And he's like, no, you're out. And he's like, them? And it's like this mom and this daughter. And they got these bright yellow shirts. So they were in front of us the whole time. And obviously the bright yellow shirt really, really resonated with me. It caught my attention. So I knew they were there the whole time. And he's trying to say that this mom and this daughter cut. And I'm like, hey, no, bull crap. You just cut. You cut. You're the one who did that. And he's like, and the guy's like, yeah, get out of the line. And so they get back to the line, the adjacent line they were in, and we get on the ferry. Well, we're on the boat, and we go around to the Statue of Liberty, and they're telling the whole story. Oh, that's really cool. We're going over, getting pictures and all this different stuff. And we're on our way back in. And I'm sitting there on this bench, and somebody sits down next to me. And I hear in my ear, what you did was wrong. And I'm like, what's that? And I look over, and it's the dude that had hopped the line. And he's like, what you did was wrong. And he's got this Eastern European accent, right? And I said, I said, what are you talking about? Yeah. He goes, where I come from, snitch. Snitch.
Oh, goodness.
And he's waving his finger and his whole thing. And I'm like, well, so but you cut the line, and you were getting that mom and that little girl kicked out of the line had you stayed in. He goes, yeah, but you know what? You don't snitch. I said, but you had lied. You were lying about these people. And my wife starts kind of chiming in. So lying's okay? And he goes, no, lying's not okay, but you don't snitch. And he's like getting closer to me, and he's total solid eye contact, and he's getting in me. And I'm like, oh, okay. Hey, I didn't realize that. That it totally makes sense now. Hey, thanks, man. I'm sorry. I didn't realize that. He's like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, just don't do that. I said, oh, yeah, you're right, man. I'm sorry. I won't do that anymore. He goes, okay, hey, have a good one. And he was getting ready to, I mean, he's wearing the tracksuit and the whole thing. Like he's
Goodness.
but you just throw out a little humility and you, what Bruce Lee say, fight without fighting.
Yeah.
So you win a fight. Yeah. What would I have accomplished if we decided to duke it out with, I've got my wife and my daughter here. He's got his family. He's got some kids. If we decided to fight it there on a ferry between Manhattan and the Statue of Liberty, what would the point be? Nothing. So you win that fight by saying, no, you're right, man.
Well, I need to channel Kenny from now on because in that situation, wow. Yeah, that gentleman, interesting perceptions, but applying that to teaching, with kids, I always say that, all these kids are coming in and saying, this kid, he just yelled at me and said this, and same thing. Like he said, I lied when I didn't, I was honest. And I said, sometimes though, you have to look at some people that are really angry and mad and, they're hurt. They're hurt individuals. Mm-hmm. So if, if they're trying to put you down, if they're trying to belittle you, why don't you just look at them and just look at them in the eyes and realize they're a hurt person.
They're struggling.
Yeah. Right. And if you were to keep that perspective, then you instead, you have a little bit of compassion, I guess, for them, even though they're, I guess, technically in the wrong, just as that gentleman is technically in the wrong big time.
Right.
Yet, you changed that. Yeah. You were being kind because again, you were with family and that's
right. But as an adult, what's the point of getting in a fight? And you know what? Maybe this guy, he gets through it to thinking, the more he starts thinking about, I don't know, but that, he has a way of thinking. And where he comes from, obviously, doesn't matter what happened. You don't snitch.
I would tell him that is exactly right in grade school. Just kidding.
And you're right. You don't be a tattletale. But you know what? Tattletale. You know what? When you're gonna, but everybody, we all got on the boat, and he just got embarrassed, and his ego got ahead of him. Yeah. And you know what? I don't have that. I don't have that problem.
Well, what's rad is what you just said is shedding your ego.
Yeah.
A lot of people have that ego, that pride that gets in the way of a lot of, that wanting to be right instead of just doing what's best in that situation. And you rose to the challenge. You did what's best in that situation.
Right.
Especially not just for yourself, but for the family and for his family. Really, you were thinking of everyone, and he was just thinking of being right. Mm-hmm. And that's right there.
Right.
Sums it up.
I'm not right a lot of times, so I'm just used to it. So
I'm married, and that has been coming to surface as well.
So we've been going for a little bit, and so I want to let everybody know out there that if you want to get a hold of the What's a Hero podcast, or you want to check us out, you can see it. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on Instagram. You can also find us find me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, as well as the good old Facebook. You can get a hold of the What's a Hero podcast there. And if you got questions, you're like, hey, yeah, I thought that same thing. You got stories. Tell me your stories. I'd love to hear little stories that you got about how you kind of overcame your ego, or what it is you're doing to serve other people. And you're saying, well, I don't like to talk about myself. Talk about yourself. How else are people going to get the idea what they can do to help other people? So let me know these things. I'd love to be able to put them on the show at some point and say, hey, check it out. I got somebody call in and said, hey, this is what they're doing to help somebody out. So put it out there. Let me know what's going on. So get a hold of us on there. You can also get a hold of the What's a Hero podcast at the What's a Hero podcast.buzzsprout.com. And you can get a hold of every other episode that we have. It also gives you links to your favorite podcast platform in which you can go ahead and download the every episode that you want. You can hold it with you. You don't have to have service. So if you're having to go on a plane, or you're going camping out in the woods where you have no service, you can still have the What's a Hero podcast to listen to. So get a hold of us, and we will be happy to, or I would be happy to put you on the show. At least if you write a story on there, let me know. I'll read it out there to everybody. So, John, you got anything you want to kind of leave everybody with?
Just do your best, be your best version, live life looking for those miracles, live life for others, give, And if you want to check out some of my art, www.johnedwardgallery.com.
That's cool. And so that is about what we're going to do for today on the What's Hero podcast. And I just want to leave you with, do your best for everybody else. Do what you can for other people. Don't always just think about yourself. And you just got to kind of drop that ego sometimes, and you got to just be humble, and you got to be honest. So,
passion, purpose, and vision.
There you go. Those three in a nutshell. So this has been the What's a Hero podcast. And so for my best friend in the world, my brother, Jon Hartle, for me, I've been Ken Frownfelter, and this has been the What's a Hero podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. We are clear.